going on, YouTube? So today we're gonna install the Teraflex big brake kit. So we actually went with the kit with bigger rotors. We're gonna go with the bigger calipers that are dual piston instead of the single piston, and we're actually gonna do the fronts and the rears. The rears don't come with new calipers, they're just bigger rotors with relocation brackets. That way it sets the rotor a little further out. It's not necessarily the gripping power that we're looking for in the rear, it's more of the leverage. You know, bigger rotor, grabbing the rotating wheel further from the center, it's easier to slow down the wheel than grabbing it right in the middle. But let's take a look at what we have in this kit. I already did open it up a little bit and kind of put a little bit of my own little touch with some red paint on the Teraflex, but let's see what we have here and what we're going to need for this install. Alrighty, so the front brake kit comes with two of the new calipers, brake pads, the banjo washers for the calipers when you change those out, a couple of rotors. This is some of the supplies that we're going to need: some brake grease, thread locker, brake cleaner, .3 brake fluid. The rears actually come with the relocation brackets and two of the rotors. It does not come with pads, so I did decide to go with new pads in the rear here. So we have some Hawk brake pads. The Hawk pads do not come with the little slider pins and stuff that go in the caliper, so hopefully mine are okay. If they're not okay, I'll just run out the store and get some, but I'm banking on the ones that are in the Jeep right now to still be in good shape. So this is what we have to work with. Alright, so here we have the caliper. You're on the inside of the vehicle looking outwards. This is the brake line that goes in. We're just going to loosen this right now because it's going to make it a little bit easier for us to take off when we're hanging the caliper. So I'm just going to break it loose, then retighten it. But you don't want to leave it loose, otherwise you're just going to drain some of the fluid out. This is a 15 millimeter, and we'll just get this in here and pop it loose. And then I'll just bring it back to where it's snug. So there you go. The brake line banjo nut is what that's called, is loosened up. So next we're going to take the caliper off. So let's take off the caliper. It's a 21 millimeter socket. It's going to be this large nut bolt right here, and then this one right up here. These can be a little tight. They should have some sort of thread locker or something like that on there. But there's a couple of ways to take this off. Some people take the caliper itself off first, that has the pads and everything. They'll take this off, and then they'll take this the mounting bracket. I'm going to try and take this all off in just one piece and then hang it up. So let's start with this down here. And the upper one, you may have to move your ABS sensor. There's a little tab right here. Pop that off, and then you can get your socket in here to take off the other bolt. Oh, important quick note of safety. When you take off this caliper, the caliper is the only thing that holds this rotor on. Take a lug nut and just screw it on to one of the posts. That will keep the rotor from falling off and falling on your foot. Alrighty. So got the bottom bolt out, top bolt is out. Don't lose these because they will be reused, so we'll set those aside. And let's see, I got plenty of brake line here. Have a bungee cord so you can hang up the caliper. You don't want to hang the caliper by the brake lines, okay, because you're gonna really mess some stuff up. So have a bungee cord so you can hook this up, and let's get this caliper off of here and hung up. Alrighty, so pull this caliper off, and it's a little snug because the brake pads are going to be set to that rotor. And I got the there we go. So I got this hanging from a good strong point up top. This is probably going to flex out a little bit, but I still have plenty of slack in my brake lines. Let me just wrap this up a little bit. I'll double it back through itself, and we'll just hang it back up here. All right, so I'm actually going to flip this over because if you can see the brake line's coming right here. If I flip it over and keep this on the top side, when we take this off later, we don't have to worry about all the brake fluid inside the caliper draining out. So let's go ahead and flip this over to the other side. So now we have the brake line on the top side of the caliper. That pointer was for free for you guys. Now we have to get this rotor off. So there's the single lug nut that I put on there to keep the rotor on there. And if you're lucky and your Jeep's not all rusted up, this should come right off. I can already see the bottom is tilted out. So no rust or anything like that to the hub. Our rotor's off. This is going to be an easy install. Alrighty, so I wanted to show the difference between the old rotor and the new the new rotor and the old rotor. But I came across this on the bag. It says, do not use brake cleaner. Every time I've done brakes before, I've always used brake cleaner. I've heard that this has kind of a finish that's on it that's designed to wear off when you use the brakes or whatnot. But do not use brake cleaner. So I guess I got to keep my grimy mitts off of this. This has so many holes because it's drilled for 5x5 and 5x5.5, so multiple vehicle applications on this. So this is the stock rotor, and right there, that's the new rotor. It's bigger there. It's sticking out a little bit on the side, almost flush on this side, but it's a lot more surface area. It's a bigger rotor. And we definitely got bigger calipers to go on this. So let's go and put these rotors on. They do sell a slotted rotor kit. It's only like $40 more, but I've heard terrible stories about driving these things off in the mud and just getting dirt packed into those slots, and it just gums up the brakes and causes other problems. But let's get this thing installed. All right, so before we put the rotor back on here, fix the balancing of the camera here. Before we put the rotor on here, there is a little bit of oxidation and stuff on the hub. I'm just going to hit it with a wire wheel, clean it up before we put the new rotor on. Alright, got that all cleaned off the wire wheel. Let's get this new rotor on here and see if I can do it without getting the surface of the rotor dirty. Not those holes, those holes. Look at that, easily put on there. Lug nut, just to hold this on here so it doesn't fall off and smash anybody in the foot. Let's get the new caliper on there. Alrighty, so we have our new caliper. The caliper does have a brass nut here and then the bleeder valve here. You want to install this with the bleeder valve to the top, obviously, because air is going to float in the brake fluid, and you want to bleed the air off, not bleed the fluid out. If you happen to put this in upside down, don't worry, because you don't have to change it. You can just unscrew one side and then swap the bleeder valve with the other side. So they kind of made it stupid proof. So we're going to use this with the factory hardware. Let me grab my thread locker and put some of that on here, and then we'll get this mounted. Alrighty, so I did put some blue thread locker on those bolts. Calipers have no pads in them right now, so what we're going to do is we're going to get this hardware, these calipers put in. So I've been sitting here doing it by hand like an absolute fool, and I got power tools laying right behind me. Don't have to have the power tools, but they help. And we'll get this torque down here. When we're done here, I believe it's 125 foot-pounds, but double check me on these facts, guys. I'm not going to be held responsible. I'm just some guy on the internet. Alrighty, I just double checked the specs on these. It's 120. And it's starting to storm here. So there's 120 for that one. $120 for that one. So there is those ones installed. You just want to make sure you torque those down and put the thread locker on those, because you do not want the caliper coming off, because that's kind of an essential piece to stopping. So let's work on the next step here. All right, now that we got the caliper mounted on there, we need to get our pads in here. So to get our pads in here, we're going to undo just one of these caliper bolts, and we're going to undo the top one. That way we can flip out. We have a 14 millimeter for the lower, and then a 17 millimeter for the upper. So let me get up on this to break it loose real quick. There we go. So we're just going to unscrew this, and then we're going to swing the caliper down. All right, like so. This boot in here, this comes pre-assembled. It's already got the grease and everything like that in there, so we're not going to have to add grease. So I'm just going to thread this bolt back in here just so it doesn't roll away on the ground. Let's get our pads. So we're going to go ahead and put this side on. Just put a little bit of grease on the ends of those. Up to you. Some people do it, some people don't. For me, every time I've done brakes, I've always just put a little bit of grease in there just to stop any sort of squealing. The pads on the front side here are a little bit harder to get in than the ones that are on the back side, but it's a matter of just getting them into that groove and then angling the pad, and there you go, it's set in. We'll get around to the other side and we'll do the pad on the back side. Alright guys, so sorry about the flip side. I was recording on the other side. It turned out the camera wasn't recording at all. So we're now on the passenger side. So where we left off, we had put the outside brake pad on. We are now putting the inside brake pad on. I've already put some brake grease on the clips. So on the back side, it's a lot easier than the front side. You don't really have to guide, like wedge it in over the bridge. It just sits in there. So now these spring clips kind of push it apart, okay? So, next thing we need to do is close the caliper. I'm going to bring you over here. See if you guys can see it better from here. So, as you can see, these are spring loaded and they press out. So, what we're going to do is we're going to hold these closed so we can take our caliper and then close the caliper over those pads, okay? There's little dimples on the pads. Those are kind of like indexing things for the caliper piston to go over. So you just need to work the caliper, get the pistons over those the dimples in the pad. So once you get the caliper up to a certain point, we're going to have to unscrew the 14 millimeter that we stored at the top, and then this little boot piece right here at the top here is we're going to have to push that in. That allows us to move the caliper the rest of the way in. Once you get that in, this is the slide pin that I just pressed in. Once we get the caliper all the way in, you can put that screw back in and we'll screw it down. I'll get it snug for now, but we'll torque it in a little bit. So real quick, I wanted to talk about, this is a brake retainer pin, spring pin, whatever, for the brake pads. So my kit actually came with one of these missing off of the pads. I did reach out to Teraflex, which amazing customer service. I messaged them like at 7:30. at night on a Saturday night, and within an hour on a Saturday night, they did reply. These pads do come from a 2009 Dodge Ram 1500. So if you go and just get any of these spring clips, which I got Duralast ones, part number P1084, you can get these spring clips that work just the same. I do have to say, the one that comes with the Teraflex kit, these springs do feel a little bit more firm, but if you need to replace them, the Duralast ones seem to work okay. So just a pointer on that. All right, so I thought I was filming again, so let me just take this off real quick so I can show you guys this process one more time. So we took this brake line off of our caliper right up here. When we took it off, you pinch the two sides of this so it doesn't drain out. Take the old brass fitting off of the inside and the outside of this, replace them with new brass crush washers, okay? You don't want to reuse them. Teraflex wants us to mount this brake line this way, but because I have the outboard shock mount by Metal Cloak, this actually hits that when it's turning. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to flip this and mount this way so it points upwards. So I'm going to take my fingers off of this, slide the banjo nut through, make sure the washer is on the back side, new washer on the front side. We're then going to mount this up in here, and then we'll screw it down. Okay, you don't want to cross thread this. Take your time, get it screwed in. If you're leaking some brake fluid, it's not the end of the world, okay? It's just a little bit of brake fluid. I probably should use some rubber gloves because it's not the best for your skin, but that's all right. And let's get this on here, and we'll snug this down a little bit. We'll torque it down in a little bit later, but we're just gonna stop the brake fluid flow from dripping all the way out. So that's that part. All right, so now we gotta torque these bolts down. The bolt for the brake line is gonna be torqued down to 23 foot-pounds, or sorry, 26 foot-pounds. Okay, time to torque these down. The caliper ones, the caliper bolts, are gonna be torqued down to 23 foot-pounds. All right, so got the calipers in. We torqued down the caliper bolts, torqued down the banjo nut. I took the little plastic cap off of the bleeder, got a tube here, and I got the master cylinder brake reservoir lid off. What we're going to do is we're just going to gravity fill the calipers right now. So I'm just basically going to open up the caliper, and we're just going to let gravity fill it. And it's going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to go and open up the other one, but while it's open, we just want to let the brake fluid fill the caliper here. We should start seeing it come out a little bit, and then we are going to start our traditional brake bleeding procedure once we get that going. So don't know if you can see it here, but there's a little bit of fluid in the line here from the gravity bleed, and it's bubbling out just a little bit there. So it looks pretty good. I'm going to go and tighten up the other side here, and then we can go and do our traditional bleeding process. So here you see, brake fluid is coming out. Let's see if I can get this gravity bleed working for you here. So you open it up. There you go. You can see it starting to run out right there. So from here, we're actually going to go ahead and do our traditional brake bleeding. So I'm going to go get a second person. We're going to pump the brakes and then just get all the air out of the lines. Alrighty, so you want to always start in the brake that is furthest from the master cylinder. So we're over here on the passenger side. I'm going to have my assistant go ahead and pump it up until it's tight and hold it. Okay, hold it. Hold it hard. And so what I'm doing is I'm cracking this open so the fluid can bleed through, and I'm trying to get all the bubbles out.
It's moving.
Yep. Okay, pump it again. So I don't know if you guys can see it there, but there's a bunch of air bubbles that just came out in the pipe there. Are you holding it?
Yes.
Okay. That looks pretty good already. We'll just give it a couple of
It's to the floor.
Okay, pump it again. Give it 3 good pumps. And then hold it. Alrighty, and we'll open it up again. We'll see if we got any air bubbles coming out on this. A couple of little ones right there. Pump it again. And hold it. And everything looks pretty clear on this side. So now we just need to go and bleed the other side. All right, I know the instructions said not to use any brake clean or anything like that, but I got some smudges in here. Looks like a little divot in the brand new rotor. Shouldn't cause any problems, but I got some smudges in here with some of my dirty fingerprints. So I am gonna wipe it down. In the past, I've always done brake clean on my rotors when they're brand new. So I'm just gonna spray some on a towel here, and I'm just gonna try and wipe off some of these dirty fingerprints I got on here, because you really don't want to contaminate the pads or anything like that. And I'll wipe them off front and back here, but just showing you the step. I did decide to use the brake clean on this. All right, we got the Jeep back on the ground. We got the wheels all torqued on. Made sure the brake fluid was topped off. It's time to go and seat the brakes here. Follow the standard seating procedures. Before you do the seating process, the brakes aren't gonna work as well as your stock ones did. What you have to do is end up transferring some of the brake pad material over to the rotors, and it just basically beds the brake pads to your rotors, and then it's gonna grab better. So you do have to go and do this. So I'm gonna go out, do the test drive, make sure everything's working, and get back and give you a kind of final thoughts on this. I know it's gonna take a while before they're like fully bedded, but we'll start with that. And then after that, we gotta go and do the rears. So I got the big brake kit for the rear, but I'll continue that one in another video. But I'm gonna go and get these things bedded real quick. So I just got back after doing the 30-mile-an-hour stop. The brakes really felt kind of squishy and didn't feel like they grabbed very much after the first one, but I've read that that's kind of normal. I let it sit for about 15-20 minutes to basically cool the rotors off. I just went out and I did the 60-mile-an-hour stops, and it was a night and day difference. At the end here, I went out and tested it one more time after everything was all set, and the Jeep is actually locking up the front wheels. If you slam on the brake, you're locking up those front wheels. And I haven't been able to lock up the brakes or anything like that on the Jeep since we put the 35s on there. So I'm really impressed with this Teraflex big brake kit. The front is done with the new calipers and everything like that. Check me out on the next video, because I will jump over and get the rear brakes done here. So hope you guys learned something. You guys were able to get this kit installed on yours. If you guys have been on the fence on whether or not you should do this Teraflex big brake kit, I'd definitely go with it. And again, with the metal cloak lift with the outboard shocks, you may want to look at getting like shocks for, the braided brake lines for a TJ. It doesn't have that metal 90-degree bend in it. But for what I have right here, it looks like it's working. No issues with clearance, but I will be keeping an eye on that. Safest bet is to go with those TJ brake lines that don't have that metal elbow in there. But anyways, like, subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one. This kit's worth it, guys. Kit's worth it. Wanted to see if I can get a better shot of that brake line there. So again, Teraflex wants you to mount this with this facing inwards because of the outboard shock right there. It gets in the way, so I mounted it upwards, and it does clear the wheel. if we look over on this side right here, you can see that it is clear of the wheel. I run 4.5 offset, so the wheel itself actually sits more right here instead of further back in.